Okay, I've got one of the most bizarre and honestly brilliant environmental stories you've probably ever heard. It's got everything: a massive, relentless desert, a maverick entrepreneur, and millions of rabbits. Yep, you heard that right, rabbits. And it all goes down in a place they used to call the Sea of Death, China's Kubuqi Desert.
And this is where the whole story gets so fascinating. Because in a place like Australia, the 200 million rabbits running around are seen as a total plague, just destroying everything. But in China, they intentionally brought in millions of them to save the environment. A plague in one place, a savior in another.
So that's the big question, right? How can the very same animal be a total catastrophe in one context, but an ecological hero in another? Well, the answer isn't really about the rabbit, it's about a masterclass in human ingenuity.
To really get the solution, you first have to understand just how big the problem was. We have to start in the Kubuqi Desert, this huge, unforgiving landscape that the locals literally called the Sea of Death. Now, the big threat here is a process called desertification. It's basically when good, fertile land gets eaten up by the desert, turning it into useless, barren sand. And in China, the Kubuqi was an absolute monster. Get this, every single year, the Kubuqi was expanding by a staggering 500,000 acres. It was just swallowing up farms, forcing whole communities to pack up and leave. For decades, the government tried everything you can think of, planting trees, building barriers, but nothing seemed to stop the sand.
And this is where our main character comes in. A local entrepreneur, a guy named Wang Wenbiao, decided he was going to take on the Sea of Death. He used his own money and a plan that, well, everybody around him thought was completely nuts.
You know, people literally laughed at him. They'd say things like, "Look at the fool trying to plant trees in the desert." I mean, it just seemed like an impossible task. But Wang saw something that nobody else did. His first plan was actually pretty simple, but clever. First, he had his team create this massive grid of windbreaks out of dry bushes. That held the sand in place. Then, inside those little protected squares, he planted willow trees, a super tough species whose roots can dig 300 feet down to find water.
And believe it or not, it started working. The trees began to grow. But that success led to a whole new problem, one that could have killed the entire project. See, for the willow wood to be thick enough to sell, all the new little shoots had to be constantly pruned back. And trying to do that by hand in the middle of a desert, it was just way too difficult and way too expensive.
So the whole project was basically at a dead end. Wang needed a solution that was cheap, efficient, and could pretty much run itself. And that solution, the real key to this whole puzzle, was about to be revealed.
The answer wasn't some fancy new machine or technology, it was the Rex rabbit. Now, this specific breed is known for its super valuable, otter-like fur, but it has one other crucial habit. It absolutely loves to eat the tender, new shoots of willow trees. Wang had just found his biological pruning machine.
And this is where the pure genius of the system kicks in. The rabbits created this amazing, self-sustaining, virtuous cycle. They were natural pruners, making the trees valuable. They were fertilizer factories, turning barren sand into soil. They even became seed spreaders, helping new grasses grow. And on top of all that, they were an economic engine, creating a brand new, profitable industry for local farmers from their fur.
So this wasn't just about planting a few trees anymore. This was a full-blown eco-economic model that brought an entire region back from the dead. And the results are, well, they're just mind-blowing.
According to a United Nations report, after about 30 years of this work, an incredible 1/3 of the entire Kubuqi Desert has been reclaimed. That's over 6,000 square kilometers of sand that's been transformed into a green oasis.
But this wasn't just a win for the environment. It was a huge economic victory too. Before this project, people were fleeing the desert with basically nothing. Now, the average farmer who's involved is earning nearly $10,000 a year.
And the scale of this thing is just huge. We're talking about a $400 million investment that's created over 2,000 new farms, selling 3 million rabbits a year. It has fundamentally changed the lives of 100,000 people. The Sea of Death literally became a sea of opportunity.
So let's go back to our original question. Why are rabbits a plague in Australia, but a blessing in China? The answer, in a word, is control. In Australia, the rabbits run wild, breeding like crazy and destroying the natural habitat. But in Kubuqi, they're part of a carefully managed system where their natural instincts are harnessed for a very specific, very beneficial purpose.
But just when you think the story can't get any cooler, It does. The same brilliant thinking behind this whole eco-economic model was then applied to a totally new challenge: renewable energy. They went out and installed 5 million solar panels in the desert. And this isn't just any solar farm. If you look at it from space, the panels form the shape of a giant galloping horse. It actually holds the Guinness World Record for the largest solar panel image on Earth.
And here's where it gets truly brilliant. The solar farm does so much more than just make electricity. The panels create shade, right? That shade reduces water evaporation and lets grass grow underneath. And who do you think they use to mow and fertilize all that grass? You guessed it, the rabbits. The whole system is fighting desertification, generating clean energy, and producing valuable fur, all at the same time.
So what's the big takeaway from this incredible story? Well, the Kubuqi model is so much more than just a local success. It's really a potential blueprint for tackling some of our planet's biggest challenges.
And why does this matter to all of us? Because right now, a mind-boggling 40% of the world's land is threatened by this exact same process of desertification. So the lessons learned in Kubuqi could have a massive impact for communities all over the globe.
You know, at the end of the day, the message from the Kubuqi Desert is one of serious optimism. It shows that when we use the right kind of thinking, where the economy and the ecology are partners, not enemies, even the most hopeless-looking environments can be completely transformed.
And that leaves us with one final, inspiring thought. If we can turn a literal sea of death into an oasis using little more than some trees and a bunch of rabbits, what other problems that we think are impossible are just waiting for that same kind of creative spark? What other wastelands, real or metaphorical, are just waiting for us to bring them back to life?